Actors on Actors variety series posted interview between Jenna Ortega and Elle Fanning recently, and during that interview, Jenna made several comments about season 2 of Wednesday. Now, when I saw this on Twitter, my first reaction was hell yes, and then at the same time, oh my god, why? So I'm gonna break down what I liked and didn't like about this show and what Jenna's comments could mean for season 2. Let's start with the horror aspect and leaning into darker themes of the story. For that, they have my full support. When Wednesday was announced and Tim Burton quickly became attached to the project, I was expecting a much more darker, nuanced treatment of the Addams family than what we saw on Netflix. Just to paint the picture in your mind, my expectations oscillated between Sleepy Hollow, a gothic romance mystery, and Sweeney Todd, a gory, disturbing musical. What we got was okay, but it became a generic YA fantasy show very quickly. The whole Hogwarts school for magical kids solving Nancy Drew type stories was fine, but it was nowhere near as incredible as what it could have been if the creators leaned more into the horror aspect of the story. Maybe Netflix insisted on making the show as accessible and digestible to as many viewers as possible, but I believe somewhere along the way they lost sight of the original premise of the show and transformed it into a Halloween costume party. I would have loved to see more sinister mysteries, dark magic, real villains roaming the halls of a more haunted school castle. Here's hoping that season 2 will deliver on that front. What worries me though is the second part of Jenna's statement, ditching all romantic interest and romance storylines. My question is, why? Did producers of the show heard some of us say it was too YA and cheesy and went, it's because of the romance? Because let's face it, romantic storylines are mainly associated with female viewers, and therefore they are labeled as cheesy and unserious. Or is it another attempt at erasing any healthy attraction, chemistry, and desire on screen? Honestly, thank God for Bridgertons. At least they are showing us we are allowed to feel things like desire and attraction. I can already see comments along the lines, Wednesday maybe just isn't into romance, or maybe she's too badass to even think about boys. Okay, let's examine that, shall we? Who is Wednesday as a character? She is a very socially awkward, self-appointed outsider that sees everything in the world through a black and white lens. In her own words, she's stubborn, single-minded, and obsessive. And I would also describe her as someone who truly doesn't care what people want her to be. In that, she reminds me so much of a character like Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter. She's so comfortable in being different, she's fearless. But at the same time, she isolates and alienates from everyone and everything, turning herself into a lone island, as she describes it, at the therapist's office, who points out that maybe this behavior is a sign of a fear of rejection. Because Wednesday truly cares about people. She is not an emotionless monster. That would make her an entirely different character and unlikable at that. On her first day at school, she pretends she doesn't want connection, but still reads Enid's blog and bonds with her. She stands up to Bianca when she bullies Rowan and meets both Xavier and Tyler. Even though Jenna Ortega plays Wednesday as a very robotic, uptight, and emotionless person, we have to remember to look more at Wednesday's actions than displays of emotions. It all stems from a deep fear of being unlovable and early childhood trauma of losing her favorite pet that led to her learning to hide and subdue her emotions. As she tells her brother in the first scene of the show, emotions are a weakness, and Wednesday spent her entire life arming herself against heartbreak. She's also adamant in rebelling against her parents, and especially her mother. Gomez and Morticia are a perfect example of a secure, passionate marriage, and one would think that it would serve as an encouraging example for their daughter's love life. It creates an opposite effect. Because her mother is so perfect and judges her, Wednesday judges herself even harder and thinks she will never live up to those standards, so there's no point in trying. Gomez and Morticia's constant PDA and stories about being high school sweethearts only entrench Wednesday in the choice to rebel against the idea of falling in love, because that would require her to open up and show what she perceives as weakness to another person. She's not immune to attraction though, and we can see that in her relationship with both Tyler and Xavier. She's what we would typically describe as an avoidant personality, and every time someone truly opens up to her, she either runs or panics because she doesn't know how to deal with it. That unfortunately has its roots in her relationship with her parents too, because they are so narcissistic in their love and desire for each other that they barely even see her. Wednesday even compares herself to Ophelia, who was eventually driven mad by her family and a love for emotionally unavailable boy, which could be her greatest fear. She doesn't want to become her parents and rebels against the idea of a family, but when her therapist asks her what's her vision of the future, she doesn't have an answer. First love interest Xavier, our resident brooding artist, would in my opinion eventually go on to become her only romantic partner if writers would have stuck with romantic storylines. But in season 1, Wednesday doesn't want to get close to Xavier. Firstly, because he probably reminds her a little bit of her father when she calls him elitist snob. He also makes the mistake of becoming extremely defensive and jealous when she spends time with Tyler. But later on, he is the one that opens up fully to Wednesday about his feelings. And as always, she runs from him, justifying her fear of intimacy with her suspicions that he is the killer of the story. With Tyler, his dark side is what draws her in. He's not scared of her. He caters to her needs to seduce her, and he impresses her. And after kissing him, she admits that maybe psychotic killers are her type. It is done in a typical Addams Family dry humor style and is played for a laugh, but I think it sort of shows us what kind of a love interest would be perfect for Wednesday. Earlier in the season, she tells townies at the cafe who taunt her about not having a guy that she's never really found one that could handle her. So I would say both Xavier and Tyler were nice options, but ultimately not what she needs. Who knows, maybe Xavier would have become someone stronger. But for me, I think the perfect choice would be devising a love interest with as strong of a character and drive as Wednesday. Morally gray anti-hero type that would make for an interesting and dramatic arc. Who said that making a show darker and more horror focused means we have to exclude romantic storylines? Have the writers of Wednesday never heard of gothic romance genre? Not to mention that both of these ingredients, horror and love, would have probably made this show much more popular than it currently is. It would be a waste of a character development to have Wednesday spend entire season 1 slowly opening up to her friendships, like with Enid and Eugene, as well as an idea of love with Tyler, only for that arc to be cut out completely. Especially since it was with guys that we saw her being truly vulnerable. When she truly let go and started dancing with Tyler, when she played her cello and Xavier saw her, and when she decided to kiss one of them. Ultimately, I think the creators are making a disservice to their show and the character by cutting out the possibility of love and desire for her. Without that, and with her avoidant tendencies, there is only so much you can do in terms of a character development in this story. And horror is a genre that still needs heart. Without something to lose, all the gore, suspense, and jump scares can fall flat. So, will this shift help solidify this show as a stronger, less cartoonish version of Wednesday, or make it less engaging and emotional for the audience? We have to wait and see. I don't know what else to tell you guys. It's one of those shows that I was very excited to watch. I was enjoying myself. It's just a one-time thing. Mediocre in terms of storytelling. And I think we can all agree that the only reason that we were so quick to fall in love with it was because of Jenna Ortega's performance. And that's why it really bothers me, this whole conversation around pushing for her vision of Wednesday, and talking to her producer and director on set and trying to figure out with her writers what's the best version of this character, as if that's something that actors shouldn't do. It really, really bothered me when some of the writers who are on the strike right now were using her as, as a punching bag. All those picket lines with signs that said, "You wouldn't have a job if it weren't for us, Jenna," or something like this. And everyone was jumping on this bandwagon, as always, to hate on her, when in fact she just really cared about her character. And that's the only reason people fell in love with this show, because we can't honestly say that we fell in love with like a Scooby-Doo mediocre mystery there, because that wasn't it. It was her performance and her character that made us really interested in and invested in this show. It's easy to pick on like a new and 20-year-old actress instead of a 40-year-old man, right? Because none of these writers that were going after Jenna so hard went after Henry Cavill when he did exactly the same thing on The Witcher set, and then resigned from the show because he just couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't take the writers that just didn't care about the story they were telling. And watching that Variety interview was really heartbreaking, especially the part where she talked about social media and how everyone went after her for what she said. My only hope is that season 2 will prove to everyone that she really deserved that producer seat, That's why I'm just so wary with them cutting out completely the romantic storylines. If done correctly, character development could still happen with friendships and all of the other stuff, but it just seems like an easy way out. Some of the characters were just caricatures of characters. I don't know, everyone was in love with Enid, but for me she's a perfect example of how you make character ridiculous when you're trying to make them too over the top, because I understand what they were trying to do with that character. They wanted to make a stark contrast between her and Wednesday, but here's the thing, you don't have to make that girl into a caricature of what a happy sunshine girl is, because Wednesday is already so deadpan and stoic that anyone smiling would be a contrast to her. Dialogues, cartoonish monsters, and set pieces that just didn't feel right. Felt like they were almost too campy and comic reliefy. So I'm excited about the horror aspect. I'm excited that maybe the mystery will be better in season 2. Again, Jenna Ortega was perfect in that role. And I hope to see more of Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia. I don't really remember, did Christina Ricci survive the end? Spoiler, I don't know. Shit. I don't remember. I will have to rewatch this probably before the season 2. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed, please do and help me grow this channel, and I'll see you later.